Hi, welcome back to my channel. The first series of which, 11 episodes, basically focused on the history of globalization, global brands, and the way they've shaped economies of nations across the world. But that was the past. And about the future? Well, COVID-19 has given us a pause to think about that, and it's going to be the subject of my new series. Before which, I thought I'd bring new viewers on board with a brief summary of the previous series. In an article published about 10 odd years ago in The Economist, the authors stated that India and China together created more than half the world's GDP until about the 18th century. India with 33%, China with 25%. But you know what happened then? As they say, curiosity kills the cat. But you know, curiosity is also the mother of invention. And extremely curious Europeans in around the 16th and 17th century made advances in metallurgy, which led to the creation of steel and superior forms of iron. And these metals together gave birth to a product which I consider to be the most disruptive ever in the history of mankind, especially in terms of shifting the balance of power away from India and China to Europe, specifically Western Europe, and a little later, Japan. And that product is the internal combustion engine. This product created mass production. And what it did was that it enabled a worker to produce far larger quantities of goods than he or she could by hand in a far shorter time and at a far lower cost. But mass production in Europe's factories created another problem. Europe's population was too small to be able to buy and consume this huge glut of factory-made products that European factories were making. But then the solution came from one amongst the growing band of curious inventors that Europe had by then in plenty. This time around, some of them used the same metals to be able to create yet another disruptive product, guns. Armed with this power, Europeans went out to conquer every nation in every other continent of the world. Why? The populations in these nations were huge, and their natives would provide the number of consumers that European factories needed to buy their products, which the natives of the rest of the world that was colonized by European nations very happily purchased, because, as in the case of Europe, workers in these colonies could not produce goods at such a low price. Another bonus for Western European nations of colonization was that the nations they colonized were very rich in natural resources. European nations then, or the masters of these nations, bought these raw materials at extremely low prices. After all, the natives couldn't haggle with their masters, could they? Shipped them back to Europe to make not only more, but a much wider variety of products. So this was the first phase of colonization, and also the birth of brands, which was helped by yet another product invented in Europe, which was the printing press. All these products work together to create what is possibly the world's first global brand out of a commodity called tea. Now, India, which was ruled by the British then, became the largest producer of tea in its plantations in the world. And British planters would sell this tea at auctions in Calcutta. The tea was then shipped back to England, where one Mr. Arthur C. Brooke purchased them kept the tea in his warehouses, sorted it into different grades, and packaged them in various kind of sizes to suit different sizes of families. And most important, coming to the printing press, the labels put on these packages very proudly bore the registered trademark, which is what brands were originally, that proclaimed the name Brook Bond. Now, Brook Bond teas were then exported from England to every colony of the British Empire. And one of these colonies, incidentally, was the then disunited States of America, until, of course, it threw its famous Boston Tea Party. The British didn't enjoy that party at all. So moving on, back to Brook Bond. Couldn't Indian businessmen have emulated Brook Bond? With tea growing in its own backyard, they could have created India's first Made in India global brand. But had they done so, that would have made India richer and Britain poorer. That wouldn't do it all, old chap. So the British had a rule. Only they could buy Indian tea for export and export it under British trademarks across the world. 200 years of colonization by the British made Brook Bond perhaps one of the most powerful global brands of that time. Incidentally, today, 75 years after the British made India independent, India is still the largest grower of tea in the world, but Brook Bond and Lipton, brands which are now acquired by Unilever, happen to be the highest revenue earners of packaged tea brands in India. So that's it. Has this story of tea done justice to the title of this episode? If it did, please press the like button and or put in your critique in the comment section below. Before I forget, the word curiosity kept popping up during this episode. And some of you may be curious to know, why is it that Indians still buy their erstwhile colonizers' brands? Hit the subscribe button below and the notification bell, and I'll do an episode that will answer exactly that question. Until then, see you.